Okay. Let me share the screen and then we will get going here. Okay, so this week we're looking at Chapter 5 and Chapter 6. And of course, we're looking at images. And with the images, there are several open source tools that you can use. Now, this slide here is showing Inkscape, and we're going to talk about SVG a little bit later on. But this is a good tool to use to create your scalable vector graphics. And we'll come back to this one in a little bit. All right, so talking about image formats. The web uses a various number of image formats, but the most common are JPEG, PNG, GIF, TIFF, and even Google has some, and of course SVG. When you're looking at images for the web, here's a couple of things you need to be considering. Number one, when you're loading your page, you want to make sure that the image that you're presenting loads fast. It doesn't want to take a long time to load. And the size matches the compression for the image that you're displaying. So for example, many times when you're displaying small decorative images on a screen, it's good to use like a JPEG. They handle large amounts of color and they compress very well. Now you're familiar with JPEGs. JPEGs will either have an extension of JPEG or JPG. They're considered, let's say, they're called a lossy format, and what this means is that you lose some of the image's original image quality when they're compressed. You can uncompress them, but uncompressing a JPEG will not restore the original quality. So with that, it's always a good idea to keep like an archive somewhere of your original images. How many of you all have like a digital camera or a nice camera like that? Okay. So your digital cameras, they're typically going to take them in a TIFF format or a PSD format. Many of them will standardize in PNG. The cell phones, like the one I'm holding here, this Apple, it will even produce images in this new format called HEIC. Have you all heard of that format before? It's not really caught on yet on the web, and they're not used too much with displaying images, but it's good to know the image formats that are available and how to compress them and uncompress them. And of course, we're going to look at some tools and actually show you where to download them, and I'll tell you the ones that I like the best and so forth. Okay, so that is PNG. Like I said, you want to keep some copies of your original TIFF and PSDs for your JPEGs. The other thing to remember about JPEGs is they do not support transparency. We often call this alpha transparency. And what this means is that you can have certain places in the image where there is no background. And so as you move the image around over text or over text, over your text on the page or over other images, the other text from beneath or images or whatever will actually show through. And those are very useful for things like logos and whatnot. The more common, probably, that everyone has seen is the PNG and the GIF. Now, PNG and GIF are considered lossless formats. This means that they can be compressed without losing quality. GIFs, however, they're only limited to 256 colors. So GIFs are they're very popular with on the web for doing memes and animations, things that they're very popular right now in that format. But they're not very good for displaying high quality images. So you need to know the place, what type of image, and where you want to use it. PNGs, excuse my spelling there, I've spelled it backwards. PNGs can support 16 million colors, okay? Especially if they're 24 or 32. The PNG 8 can only support 256 million. PNGs are considerably larger than JPEGs, and they are usually preferred over GIFs. Okay, so another type of image that's come out in recent is the Google WebP image format. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't used this one very much, and really because it's not supported by only a couple of browsers. My time doing support for Indiana State University and for the Department of the Army and other government agencies, they pretty much standardize on Chrome, Firefox, or Internet Explorer. And those are the only ones they allow. So Google WebP format is only supported right now by Chrome, Opera 12, and Android browsers. It's something to keep an eye on. It supports both lossy and lossless compression. It features the alpha transparency, which is pretty important. For me, I usually don't use JPEGs unless I have a particular area that I need to use them. I like to use the PNGs a lot. Okay, that's your Google WebP format. All right, so let's talk about color. Color is important. Computers can display millions of colors, and typically the image format is something you need to pay attention to because they're limited. So I mentioned earlier that GIF and PNG 8 can only support 256 colors. That's not really a lot of colors, okay? JPEG, PNG 24, and PNG 32, they can support 16 million. And that's important. All right, so let's talk about size for a moment. Right now, I'm sharing my screen, and I have a pretty good internet connection here at the house. And so it's not as much an issue for me to stream this. And my internet connection for viewing web pages and YouTube and Netflix and Hulu and everything is pretty fast. But that's not the same case with everybody else out on the web. So you have to think about what size image will work best for your website. And I mentioned this before last week. It's a good idea that when you're planning your websites to kind of pencil it out on paper, figure out where you want your images to be, where you want your text to be, what you're trying to convey. And when you determine the size of your image, of course, you could have a ginormous image that is at regular size is bigger than a 64-inch television. But really, if you're only going to squish it down to maybe 100 by 200, what's the point? And not only that, now you've slowed your web page from loading. And if you're like any typical user, if your page takes more than a couple of seconds to load, we click off of it and go somewhere else. So think about sizing your images appropriately. You don't want to put ginormous images on there. You may want to say, hey, for a higher quality image, click here. Or you could make your images clickable to display the higher quality image. But you always want to streamline what you have. Another type of image that is useful is the SVG. Now, SVGs are scalable vector graphics, and they use what is called XML format. Are you guys familiar with XML? XML is kind of like HTML, but with XML, it gives you the ability to specify exact details of the data that makes up your image. So you can specify your XY coordinates, you can specify the radius. It has all of these geometric calculations that you can use. And if you're good with geometry and trigonometry and all of that, you can write the XML yourself. I don't recommend it though. That would give me a headache at the end of the day. There's some great tools though that use the SVG XML syntax, and they create those for you. One of the best I mentioned earlier, let me pop back to that slide, is SVG. I recommend downloading this, installing it on your computer, and just playing around with it. And then of course you can edit the SVG file with any text editor and see the underlying XML. Okay. The other nice thing about SVG, which is kind of important now in HTML5, is this idea that you can pair it with JavaScript and CSS, and you can have it do unlimited number of things. In fact, there are some great libraries out there right now using SVG to create HTML video games. It's pretty incredible what you can do with SVG. I think in the future, you'll probably see a lot more platforms that come up on the web offering video games, because computing power of your devices is only going to grow, and really the only thing limiting you from processing and doing that is your browser and the amount of RAM and CPU allotted to it. So I think SVG is going to become exceedingly important as we move forward. All right. Let's look at some other image software that you guys can use. I'm going to stop sharing this for a second, and I want to invite you to do this with me. Okay. So we're going to go to gimp.com. Or is it gimp.org? It's gimp.org. I'm sorry. Okay. The name in GIMP stands for GNU Image Manipulation Program. So it's free. It's open source. It's an image editor. You can use it to do a lot of high quality artwork. In fact, it can compete with Adobe Photoshop and the other graphic design studios. You can program for it. It'll take C, C++, Perl, Python, the Scheme programming language, and more. In fact, I think you could even use Java in this for the programming algorithms. You can do any number of things. It works well, of course, with Inkscape. All right. I recommend downloading it. It's a great tool. The other one that is also good to have on hand is paint.net. And paint.net, you can get it here. I still use GIMP from time to time, but paint.net has become my go-to image editing platform. In fact, I've got it open right now. So let me give you a demonstration with paint.net. So this is paint.net. You can so this is a standard image I pulled off the web somewhere and I overlaid it. You can add text to it. You can take the text and add drop shadows. Let me blow it up a little bit bigger here. There you go. Let's make the drop shadow a little bit more visible by changing the color here. Okay. So you can see the drop shadow just a little bit there in the background. The other thing you can, you've got a drawing tool. You can do different squares. You can adjust the color. Tons and tons of things you can do here. Paint is really good if you have multiple images you want to overlay, and of course it keeps track of those here and it saves them in a proprietary format called Paint. But you can also export as a PNG, a TIFF, a bitmap, which we didn't talk about, JPEG, GIF, or you can even export as a PDF. highly recommend it. The other things you can do with paint.net is you can adjust your size. So you can scale proportionally, which if I change one of these to say 500 and I scale it, it scales the whole thing proportionally, right? All of those are important features with your web editing. Okay, all right, so let's go back here and look at the other options real quick. All right, so that's GIMP, that's Paint. Inkscape, let me pull up Inkscape for you. I had talked about it a minute ago. It's inkscape.org. I keep forgetting this. There we go. Okay, so this is Inkscape. And Inkscape is how you can create SVGs. All right. So if we were to go to the community, to the gallery, you can see samples of SVGs that people have done. So here is an animation. What I talked about earlier, you can use Inkscape to create SVG animations. And the incredible thing about Inkscape is because it's scalable vector graphics, when you zoom in on these images, they will continue to grow in size without becoming pixelated, which is something you don't get with regular images. The other thing that's interesting is if you actually inspect a Inkscape image, here, of course, it shows the file. SVG is the image format, but you can actually open this image if you download it. And let me do that now. Let me save the image, and we'll save it there. Let's see here. Let me show in Finder. Can you all still see what I'm doing? I'm sharing everything with you right now, right? Okay, so I'm just going to open this with Atom. It may take a minute. There you go. Okay, this is the image. Now, this particular image has a background on it, and this background is probably some sort of JPEG. So what they've done, they have hashed the JPEG as base64 and stored the data for the JPEG right here as content within the XML file. And of course, the browser takes that encrypted data and redisplays the base 64. All right. Let me go to the very top here. But as you can see, it tells you the line gradient to use. It tells you the XY coordinates. It tells you the gradient transform, all of the geometry involved in it. And it's all done through XML. Now, let's see here. See if I can go to the bottom of the image and see a little bit more. Yeah, here you go. There. So now you can see the other geometric XY coordinates that are used for making different things. This one is an animate attribute, and all of this is done with SVG. There's a lot of things you can do with SVG, a lot of very, very cool types of images, and they'll work on the web. All right, let me pull up one more. This is just a standard pattern that someone created, and All of it's done with SVG using Inkscape. All right, so that is Inkscape. Let's go on and move forward here. So if you could, what I'd like you to do is download paint.net, and we're going to walk through a quick tutorial on how to use it. Because unless you've downloaded and you've installed and paid the exorbitant price for Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Effects or all of that, it's very, very expensive. If you're a photographer, it's probably worth it. But if you're not, if you're a regular web developer like myself, sometimes it's just cheaper and easier to go with the other tools. So let's go ahead and download paint.net. You can go to, again, the site is, where did it go? Yes, it is. In fact, I'm running it on a Mac right now. Let me pull up the site again. Oh, here it is. So you just go to getpaint.net. There's going to be, click on the download, and you're going to see for the Windows version, you probably depend on the .NET framework. And then there is also other versions. Let's see. Where is it at? Let me see if I can find it for the Mac users. There it is. So for the Mac, you need to go to paint.net for Mac. And I'll post that in the chat room for you all. Let's see. And if you're not using a Mac, you're just going to go to getpaint.net. Okay. For your Mac users, because this is downloaded from the web, you're going to have to go. Let's see. It is security and privacy. And go to general. And you're going to have to say allow apps to be downloaded from. And you can click here and say App Store and unidentified developers. Otherwise, you won't be able to install it. Okay. For those of you using Windows, have you already downloaded and installed the application? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this image down and pull this out of the way for a second. And then we're going to go to our directions here. So let's do this. Go out onto the web. And I'm going to search for a picture of Saipan. Go to the images for Google or DuckDuckGo or Bing, whichever one you use. Here is a photo taken by somebody online. I'm going to copy. Let's see, save the image as to download it. So we got Bird Island. And you can see that it's being saved as a JPEG. So I'm going to save that in my, my downloads. For our purposes right now, this could be any image. It doesn't have to be something of Saipan, but for you, just so we could walk through basically how to use paint.net real quick. All right. Now I've downloaded the image. What I want to demonstrate though is if we look at the image and view it on a page, we can see just a little bit of detail about it, right? It's a JPEG, and so if I pull it out a little bit further, I don't know, are you all seeing the pixelation that occurs? It gets a little bit more fuzzy. This is the key about what they call lossy or lousy formats. The bigger you try to blow them out, you don't get detail, you get more distortion, okay? But the reason that they're used is because they can be sized for the site. So if we went to Nations Online for this Google map of Saipan, and we looked at it, you can see here that the way they've used the image, it is sized appropriately for their size site. So if I inspect the way they've used the image, let's see, we can see that the image is here. They have a specified width on the image and a specified height, right? And of course they apply the alt attribute to identify what it is for those who are visually impaired. All right, so the way this is set up, if we change the width here, and say we change the width to 655 instead of the other, and I hit enter, out this height attribute altogether, it should size appropriately to, well, it's being difficult. There we go. It should size appropriately to, it'll snap to a certain dimension, is what I'm trying to say here. They're statically telling it to be a certain size, but we're just adjusting it now based on the width. And using the width attribute, it will actually change the size proportionately. So I could take it down to a 400, and again, it's sizing proportionately, right? Now, why am I showing you that? Well, when we look at this image within paint.net, it's going to tell us certain things about the size of the image. For example, this image was saved originally at 855 by 267, right? And this is in pixels. We haven't talked too much yet about pixels, but a pixel is one measuring unit on the screen that makes up the color. So if we zoomed in as far as we could go, we're going to get down to an individual pixel, right? So if we counted this up, there would be 855 pixels across and 267 pixels going up, right? All right, so basic stuff. All right, so you have the image now. Let's go ahead and look at this real quick. We're going to take the image and we're going to save it as, you can save it as a ping. And so we'll click OK. So now the image is a ping. And if I view this on my computer, I'll see that I have these two. I've got this ping image. Tells me the image type, the size, so forth, right? And I've got the JPEG, right? Other things you can do. Let's see here. We want to look at changing the size. This is important for you all as you get ready to use images. How do you change the size of an image? Well, you go in here, you can adjust the size, and you can tell it to scale proportionately, or you can tell it you don't want it to scale proportionately. So let's say we want to bring this down to just 200 instead. And now I've chopped the size of the image. And you can see that what it did was it chopped off pixels at the top, right? The other way you can do this is use your crop tool. And you can adjust your crop to just the area of the image that you want to see. And you just double click on it, and now you've adjusted the size of the image like that as well. All right, so that's one piece of it. The reason I'm showing you this is because as you move forward towards your project, and of course with website development in general, you want to make sure that you size the image appropriately. It doesn't necessarily mean that your image has to lose all the quality. It just needs to be sized appropriately for what you're trying to display or the content you're trying to show. This is important. All right. So remember that using the image size, it makes it easier to determine what type of files you want to save. So I have these two files, the ping and the JPEG. And if I'm to view here, let's see. These images comparatively, I can see that this one is 65 kilobytes and the PNG is 454 kilobytes. Do y'all see that? So same size image, one's lossless, one is not. And you can infer which one will take longer to download and present on the page, right? The ping will take longer to display, whereas the JPEG will not. All right, any questions so far, guys? Okay. Okay. It probably lets you download it okay, but it won't let you install. Is that what you're having a problem with? You don't want to you can't download this through the App Store. It won't be. If you use so if you use this one, there's a open source version of this, and this is the one that I use. Now wow, have they done this to us? They sure have. Gotcha. Paint.net for Mac. Well, that is an interesting problem you're facing here because when I got this earlier, it was available for the Mac. Okay. Well, the alternative here is to go ahead and download and use GIMP. And I believe, let's see, how much does it cost for the other version? Does it say? Let me hit it up real quick again. So it's $29.99 for the app. This is bizarre because this is not the same as what I'm using. All right, let me guys, let me come back to this for you because this is, I don't want to take up our time in class for this issue. Let me find it and then I'll shoot you the link to where you guys can get it. Would that work? Okay. For those of you on Windows, you should be able to download the Windows version of Paint.net with no problem. This really... Yeah. All right, I'll figure this out for you guys. Okay. As an alternative, you can download GIMP and use it as well. Okay, so again, things to consider for images, image sizes. How much space will the image take up? This is this is pretty important. Again, you're thinking about the size in memory, but you're also considering how much space on the screen. And then for those who are visually impaired, you want to use the Alt attribute. Okay. So let's talk about basic layouts. What I want you to do is with TextPad, or excuse me, with if you're on a Mac, use Finder. If you're on a PC, use your Explorer. I want you to open up a location. And of course, I'm going to go to my NMC folder. And inside my NMC folder, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to create a new folder, and I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to open this in a new tab. I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this my website. So we're going to talk about, what we're going to do here is talk about the layout of your site. How do you create the folder structure for your site? Where do you organize your files at? So in my folder site, I'm going to go ahead and let's see here. I'm going to bring open a terminal window for myself. It's not big enough. Is it not going to let me do it? Here we go. So I'm going to go to the NMC, CD to the CSS. All right. CD to my websites. And right now there's nothing in the folder. So let's talk about organizing. So remember, always you're going to have an index.html. You're going to have some type of place to store your images. So create an images directory. Right? You're going to have a location for storing your cascading style sheets. So usually the standard is to create a CSS folder. There we go. Okay. And then it's also typical to have a location for storing things like your JavaScript or your scripts. And so just create a scripts folder. Right? So that should be, in general, the layout, the type of things that you want to hold. Now, let's talk about images. Let's say I navigate into my images folder. And let's say that I have images, a lot of images. Well, how should you organize them? Again, make sure that you keep the name of your images fairly straightforward. You want to keep them all with, lowercase, dash, something, right? So say I have an image of Bird Island. I'd want to name it something like that, but also for visualizing and understanding what size it is, I want to put the size of the image on the tag. This is not recommended in your textbook. This is just good practice, because when you look at the image, then you can know right away what the size of the image is. So if I know that my image is 255 pixels by 100, I can look at it pretty quickly and know what it is. And then of course, you want to store your images either as a JPEG or a PNG, a GIF, a TIFF, and so forth, right? All right, the other thing, of course, is your index.html. So if we're looking at this, let me close that, and then I'll come back to Atom, and we'll close the carp SVG. And let's see, I'm going to open a project, and the project I'm going to open is the folder that I just created. So let's go up a level and go to my website and click Open. Now here's my project structure. Again, I'll let Atom do the work for you, right? I have an image here, but there's nothing in the image. In fact, if I click on it, it's empty because there is no data on it. I just created this on the fly. So what I want to do is I want to grab my images that I just downloaded, and I'm going to select this is annoying. I'm going to select both of my images, copy those, and go to the directory. Paste both those in there. I'm going to take this one out because it's empty. All right. And we know that both of these images, this one is 855 pixels, right? By 267. So for both of these, $855 by 267, and this is a ping, so I'm going to make sure the label is on it. And then, of course, right here as well. Okay, so I have my images. Go back to Atom. There they are there. Let's create an article. And inside the article, I'm going to create an H1 picture of Bird Island, Saipan, image, and then I'm going to reference the image, right? So remember the path, images, slash bird island, Saipan, 855 times 267.jpeg. And then the alt statement, we want to use picture of Bird Island from, I don't know when this was, 2015. Taken, a lot of photographers, they'll do this. They'll put a subtitle, and they'll put the notation that this picture was taken with a, you know, a Canon XLR, blah, 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 blah. All right. So we save that. If we open this, we can see there's our picture of Bird Island, right? And if we inspect the image, we can see Bird Island, take an XLR. All right. Basic stuff. Basic stuff. Let's go back to the slides real quick. Let's talk about icon files. Okay. Let me give you an example. For Indiana State that I work for, they like to use this leaf. Do y'all see that? The little maple leaf? Let me see if I can, let's see here. Gonna inspect. Okay. Let's see here. All right, hang on 1 second. Hi, Sean, are you back? Yeah, I don't know what you... That's okay. Oh, okay. Thank you guys for looking out for each other, because I wouldn't have noticed that Sean was gone. All right, so let's talk about the icon. In this site, let's see, where is it at? Usually you can see the icon. Let's pick a different site. Let's see. Does NMC have their... I don't think they put it on there, but I know these guys do. The ICO image is usually stored, the reference to it is stored up here in the meta link. and it's going to point to, it's called a fave icon is what it's called. Do y'all see it anywhere? These guys got them hidden. That's why I can't find it. All right. Anyways, what you can do, your icon are basically these little things that show up in the tab. It makes it so that you can see, distinguish your site from someone else's. When your site doesn't have an icon tab, it looks just like what we see here. It has just a blank. Yeah, thank you. So what I was showing you was like these icon tabs at the top. These are what makes your site distinguishable from other places. So for example, this site, it doesn't have an ICO tab. The little page that we just created doesn't have one. So let's go out and we're going to create an icon real quick. All right. So this site here is called Icon Converter. And I will paste this into the chat room again. Whoops. There you go. Thomas, you have a good day, man. I know you got to take off. He's probably already headed out. All right. So this is the one of the mini icon converters. There's another one here called Icon Editor. And if you happen to find others, please post them. Now this one here, it allows you to create the icon and then download it, right? So if I go in here and let's see, I'm going to change my icon to blue. And I'm going to try to draw a bird. All right, it's a very stylistic bird, right? You have to imagine you're seeing it out in the distance. All right, so if I download this, for example, if I preview it, it'll show me what the icon looks like, and there it is. And that's what it would look like on the site. Y'all see that? So that site is called Icon Editor, and you can create as many icons as you want. And of course, for your project, part of your home. Yes. How do I download it? Where's the download? Is it under the preview? Yeah, I did, and it didn't give it to me. Export. Ah, there it is, export icon. Okay, so I've got my favorite icon. It's not my favorite icon, it's my fave icon, right? Little HTML humor for you all. All right, I'm going to copy it. Let's say copy fave icon. We're going to go to our images and we'll paste. No, it won't let us do it that way. So we'll come over here to images and paste the item. All right, so there's the fave icon. Now, to use the fave icon on your site, you have to use the following syntax. You're going to have link, rel, shortcut to icon, and then the reference to where it's located. So come back over here. Going to put it right there. It's inside my images. So image, right? Save it. Title, it's the title to this page. Stuff about Bird Island. We'll save it. We'll come back and here's our site. I'm going to close it and then refresh. All right. Now it's hard to see, so let me drag that out a little bit. And there's the icon. Do you see it? You can barely see it because it's blue on black. All right. But that's in general how you create your fave icons. All right. Let's go back to our, let me put that back over here. All right, so creating your fave icons, right? All right, so now the other thing is HTML links, and this is kind of getting into to next chapter. I believe there's still some more items that we want to talk about, and some of those happen to do with whether or not you use Adobe Photoshop, saving your images. Of course, you also want to be very careful. Very, very careful. I mentioned this before in class about where you get your images. A lot of these are copywritten. So if you go out and you download something off the web, you want to make sure that you're not getting yourself in trouble, because you very much can get into trouble if you use a copywritten image that's out there. All right, I'm going to show some other, image editors you can use. We've got GIMP. We have one that's called Acorn, and this is at flyingmeat.com/acorn. It's a very creative name. This is a image editor. This one's like $29.99. I'll copy that and I'll put that into the chat for everyone. You have image editors like, let's see, I think we already looked at this one, Pixelmator. Pixelmator.com is it's like another version of GIMP. So you can try it for free and then buy it. And I'm not sure what the cost is. Let's see. What do they charge for this one? $27.99. It's not bad. Okay. Pixelmator.com. I'll post that into the chat log for everyone. We've already looked at paint.net. And of course, there is the very expensive ones like Paint Shop Pro. And you can find that at www.corel.com. And of course, these are very, very expensive. Okay? Very, very expensive. All right. Any questions so far? No questions? Okay. Let's open up Paint real quick, and we'll demonstrate creating something of a that is 640 by 480. And in paint.net, and this is also true in GIMP, the checkered background that you see, this is the transparency. So anytime you see the checkered background, that doesn't mean that that's the checkered you'll see when you display the image. This is just the transparency. So you can do any various number of things here. I've got a box, and let's see. I'm going to create an image with a curve. And I'm going to change the stroke on the image to make it more visible, and then we'll change the size of the image of the line. And we'll add some text. Image with transparency. All right, I'm going to bring the size of that down just a little bit. Okay. So I have my image. I'm just going to save it real quick. Now remember, you cannot save this as a JPEG, because if you do, you're not going to be able to preserve the transparency. In fact, what will happen is that all of this in the background will become white. So what we want to do is we want to make it either a GIF or a PNG. GIF won't work because you're limited by the number of colors. So we'll call this just image with image transparency. And I'm going to record my size of the image, 640 by 480. And it's a PNG, but I'm going to go ahead and save it to the directory that I want. And let's see. There's the NMC directory. There, my website, images. All right. PNG. Save it. Okay. We'll go back to Atom and we'll insert another image. Say it's in our images directory, and this is image transparency 640 times 480. It's PNG. Always get in the habit of using your Alt. Okay. And image that demonstrates transparency. Okay. Now to make this stand out a little bit more on your screen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert up here a style, and we're going to be getting into these in I think next week or the week after, but I'm just going to put a style on the body, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say that the background color of my image is gray. And then I'm going to change the font family, which will affect every piece of text on this screen because I'm using the body tag in my style. And I'm going to specify Tahoma, Helvetica, Arial. Yeah, we'll just do those. Okay. All right, so we'll save that. I've got two images now. I've got the alt. I've got all of this stuff specified. So let's go back to our image. We'll refresh it. And you can see that how the transparency works then with the background color. Does everyone see that? One of the things that my image has as well is it has a shadow, a background shadow on it. And with the background color, it doesn't matter what color I make it, the alpha transparency will show through on that background. So for example, I'm now inspecting the HTML, and if I could change it to yellow, if I want to make it yellow, you can see it still shows. In fact, the transparency of the image of the ping, do y'all see this? It actually comes through because even the shadow is using the alpha transparency. Okay? All right. So this is just a quick sample changing background colors so you can see transparency. Any questions so far about this? Now to demonstrate, if we went back and we made our image, if we saved it as a JPEG, we'll save it to the same location. And I come back over here, and just for making this quick, I'm going to copy, paste. The name of it is exactly the same except the, JPEG. Because you see here that the file extension is JPG instead of JPEG. They both mean the same thing, but just pay attention to that. All right, so now I have both of these on the page, and if I refresh it, you're going to see what happens here. The transparency becomes white from the image, and it doesn't convert over well. So those are some things that you have to consider when you're dealing with your images. All right, one other thing I want to show you. Right now I have these images sized at 640 by 480, but I can as well change the size parameters by just using the width attribute. And I could use an exact pixel, or I could use a percent. So let's say I change this from width of 640. Let's change it to 600. And I save that and refresh it. This image up here is going to become smaller. And because I used only one attribute, it proportionally sizes, right? Now let's do the same thing down here, but we'll change this size. Instead of 600, we're going to make it 800 in width. We're causing it to stretch out. And you can see it proportionally sizes out. Okay. Now, there's also a number of tools that you can use. This is listed in your textbook. Tools that you can use to change the sizes without downloading the fancy image editors. For example, you can use, let's see, I believe it is imageoptimum.com. And you can download this for free, and you can use it on a Mac or, yeah, this is only for a Mac only. You can change the sizes of images, and it will do it for you. You can use JPEG Mini. Let me paste this into the chat room for those of you guys who want to resize images. That's for a Mac. You can also use this site. It is called jpegmini.com. Again, this is listed in your textbook. And this is just a free tool for resizing images. Okay. jpegmini.com. And I'll paste that into the chat as well. Another great one, let's see, is smooshit.com. You gotta love these names. And smooshit.com may not be available anymore. Maybe it isn't. All right, let's play around here with something. If you guys go to, let's see, online image editors, these are also very frequently used. So you have, you can edit PDFs online. Here you go, free online image editor. You can upload an image. So I'm gonna, there it is. I'll upload the Bird Island image. And then there's, of course, different things you could do here. You can resize it. You can specify how big or small you want it to be, and it'll save it as that size. You can flip them. So say you want to flip horizontally. That would mess with people, wouldn't it? Like, how did you take that picture? There's a lot of things you can do with it. This is called onlineimageeditor.com. These are all free tools that you can use. Why is it not letting me paste? Copy. No. Over here. There we go. Another site, I'm not sure. So if you go to your regular Gmail, I discovered this the other day, you can go down to your Google Drive, and Google Drive also has a way that you can create files. So you go down here to More, and you have files. If it'll stop processing, you can download it as PDF, JPEG, PNG, or an SVG. There's a number of different things you could do. Again, you can upload images into it. You can add text, so you can type whatever. You can create boxes and squares and so forth. All right, that is Google Draw. Okay. Now I've given you quite a few different options here. Excuse me, I forgot. It did not post the last chat message for some reason. Well. There we go. That was weird. All right, so I've given you quite a few different options that you can use for editing images and so forth. These are really great tools, and it's important that you get comfortable with using these. All of the images are going to be image editing tools are going to be your friend, and as you get into doing the website development, you're going to find that it's very important you can edit the images appropriately, scale them to the right size, and to find out what best will work for your site. Guys, any questions so far? You all have been very quiet. No questions? All right. So let's see here. There's a lot that we still can do with the images, but I hesitate to get into because we're not going to be using the CSS properties just yet. But at this point, I feel like it's a good spot to stop for the day. We're gonna on Thursday get into HTML links, and then the remainder of the class on Thursday we're gonna spend time going through the homework assignment and doing that together. If you guys don't have any other questions at this time, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. For those of you who want to stay back and ask more questions one-on-one, or if you're needing help with something, I'll be available for the next 30 minutes. All right? Okay, guys. Okay, see you Thursday. Again, anyone who needs help, just I'll be here to stay behind for a little bit.